And we are live. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. How is everyone doing? Welcome back to yet another show where we talk about interesting topics. So we just give our commentary, an interesting commentary on things that are happening around the world. And today we're going to be talking about Ben Shapiro, the facts guy, the guy who believes in, facts over logic, right? So we're going to be talking about Ben Shapiro's four facts about Israel. So he was sort of debunking four myths, quote unquote, four myths about Israel. And I am going to be analyzing and quote unquote debunking his debunking of those four myths, right? So let's just see how it goes. If you're here, please tell me how I sound, how the sound is, because I'm getting some sort of feedback. I don't know if you're getting it. If it's clear, just let me know if it's clear. If it's not, so I can adjust my audio settings. But if not, we'll just continue. So, like this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So, welcome to Critical African Thinkers. But before we continue, I would like to tell you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget my crime fiction novel. I know I don't always talk about it, but you can get it on Amazon. It's an interesting read on race and colonialism. It's actually a crime fiction novel, but it features an interesting debate on race and colonialism. And those that have read it have, okay, look at this comment from from this guy. Sorry about that. He said, a fun read, thought provoking, fair, very fair presentation of ideas set in an area of the world where, as an American, I had no familiarity. So it's something that you're definitely going to enjoy. So grab a copy from Amazon. Hey Stanley, how you doing? So let's get down to the meat of the conversation for today, debunking Ben Shapiro's four facts about Israel. Now, we know that Ben Shapiro is known to have popularized the phrase, facts don't care about your feelings. And that's a sentiment that I mostly agree with. And he invokes that phrase when dealing with people on the left who are mostly dismissed as simply going off on emotions and not logic. Now, that critique is sometimes correct. For example, the facts of biology don't care about your feelings about gender identity and sex. So whether you think there are a dozen genders or two, biology simply doesn't care. But let's see just how factual Ben Shapiro can be when analyzing an issue in which he has a personal stake and emotional investment. Would it be as factual, stating inconvenient truths as they are, or would he cherry pick the facts using bullshit logic and leave out important context to paint a narrative that aligns more closely with his beliefs? And that's what we're about to find out in this video. Now, following the recent attack by Hamas on Israeli citizens during a festival, in which up to 1,000 Israelis have been reportedly killed, conversations around the decades-old Israeli-Palestinian conflict has resumed. Who owns Palestine? Who are the Jews? Are they indigenous to Palestine? Is Israel an occupying force? Are the Palestinians unreasoning terrorists seeking nothing less than the destruction of the state of Israel? These are pertinent questions that need to be answered factually. But because of the complex nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, most of the answers given by people on all sides fall short of being factual and logical. So, in keeping with this current discourse, Ben Shapiro released an 8-minute video debunking so-called four myths about Israel and revealing corresponding facts as well. So I'm going to be critiquing his so-called facts in this video. So I'm going to play his video, and Stanley, please tell me how my mic is. Is it okay? Is it sounding well? If not, let me adjust it. I'm going to play that video and just react to it as we go. So let's begin. Yeah, here we go.
There are four myths generally propagated by the left around the history of Israel and the Palestinians. These myths matter because They lead people into a peculiar moral relativism whereby attempted murder or successful murder of Jews is excused, and meanwhile, the evil human rights violations of the Palestinians are minimized. Myth number 1. Israel is historically Muslim territory. This is a pure and absolute lie. Israel is historically Jewish territory. According to the Bible and certain interpretations of contemporary
Now, so this is where Ben makes his first mistake, right? You're going to be given facts, right? And your source is a religious text. You're starting off with a religious text. I am a Christian, of course. Accept the I accept the Bible. I accept everything written in the Bible. But I also understand that not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody would accept those interpretations. Not everybody will accept those chronology, right? So if you're dealing with something where everyone does not accept you have to come with something much more, substantive, something much more um, intellectual, something much more scientific than just quoting the Bible. Yeah, based on biblical records and archaeological records, this is why this is, right? So he has said that the Jews have historically are the historical owners of Palestine, but you've got to ask yourself, which exactly which historical period is he talking about? Because Palestine has been held by different people throughout different historical periods. So, which historical period is Ben Shapiro exactly talking about? Is it talking about 4,000 years ago? Is it talking about 3,000 years ago? Is it talking about 2,000 years ago? Is it talking about 100 years ago? Because if you look at all those different time periods, then different people have held sway in the place that you now know as Palestine. For example, the earliest recorded people in Palestine were called I think the Gasolites or something. But the most commonly known ones are the Canaanites, right? Who inhabited that place around the fourth millennium. I think the fourth millennium, around the fourth millennium. They were not Jewish, right? And even if you read the Bible itself, when the people of Israel left Egypt and then they went to the land of Israel as it is now. When they left Egypt, there were people already living there. The Philistines were there, the Canaanites were there. There were other people living there. So this idea that historically it is Jewish land, uh, well, they held it for a while, and other people have held it after that. After the expulsion of the Jews, the Muslims, the Arabs, they came in and they held it, and they held it up until 1948 when the Jews took it back from them. So on this ground, this is not a very solid ground to base your state on, that your people were there 2,000 years ago. So now, therefore, because the people were there 2,000 years ago, that gives you the right to that land. It's just like saying African Americans right now in America, they go to say Ghana, and then they say, well, our ancestors were taken from this place. Now we're going to chase everyone away from here and create our own state. People will look at them like, really? Of course, these people are descended from African slaves, but they don't have that ties to that land anymore. They have no claim to that land. Their claim is to where they currently live. So let's continue.
archaeology. Joshua entered the land of Israel in 1400 BC. The kingdom of David was founded around 1000 BC. The first temple of Solomon was built in approximately 957 BC. The second temple was built in approximately 515 BC. The Hasmonean dynasty was founded in 166 BC. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 BC, and the Jews exiled from Israel in 136 CE after the defeat of the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Romans, in an attempt to shame the Jews, renamed the area Palestine as an
So
insult after the Jews' historic enemy, the Philistines. Even during the
So this point that Ben is just making, that the Romans renamed the place Palestine after the Philistines in order to that's just pure speculation. He's just purely speculating that the Romans named it Palestine to what? To spite the Jews. That's that place had been known by different names. It was known as Syria Palestina during the Roman time. So there were different names for the place. So for you to think that it was basically to just spite the Jews, I think that is historically inaccurate.
exile, there was continuous Jewish presence in the land. Islam, which is the religion of the Palestinian Arabs, was not even founded until the 7th century CE or AD. No independent Arab state has ever existed in the area known as Palestine. Myth.
So there are a couple of things here. The first one is he said that one of the one of the first things he said was that okay. So I think there's a point that I need to address here that Ben made. Yeah.
Palestine as an insult after the Jews' historic enemy, the Philistines.
Okay.
Even
So
during the
the point I was trying to make is that Ben said Jews had always lived in the land, which is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Jews have always been in the land of Israel, even up until 1948. Jews when the land of Israel was never totally free of Jews. You can even look at the historical records of the Crusades, when the Muslims and the Christians were fighting after Jerusalem, fighting over Jerusalem. When the Muslims come to Jerusalem, they see Jews and they kill Jews. When the Christians come, they see Jews there and they kill Jews. And this was way after the Roman expulsion of Jews. So Jews were there were never a time where Jews were absent in the land of Israel, right? But there were Jewish diaspora. There were Jewish people in the diaspora in other parts of the world, right? So they became dispersed to other parts of the world. So it's not it's I agree with Ben that yes, the state of Israel or the land Palestine has always had Jewish people because they never totally left. Now the problem with the problem with the formation of the state of Israel is not so much that the indigenous Jewish people decided to form a state. It's that Jews who had left Israel 2,000 years ago are deciding to come back and create a state after 2,000 years to a place that they had their grandparents did not live there, their great grandparents did not live there, their great grandparents did not live there. In fact, when the whole partitioning problem came up, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem said something that he was ready to, he was ready to accept, he was ready to live with with the Jews who were already there before 1948, right? But that other Jews before that came afterwards they were not going to be allowed to live in the land of Israel. And it makes sense. Those guys were Europeans. Yeah, they were culturally Jewish or religiously Jewish, but they were mostly European, right? Jews have always existed in the Middle East. Jews have always existed and lived within the Muslim population as well. Yeah, there have been cases where they were victimized. Yeah, that happens. That has happened to Jewish people throughout their history. And I can understand the need for them to have a homeland of their own because they've been victimized throughout their history in different parts of the world. So I understand the need for them to want to create a Jewish state. But creating it in Palestine, where there are other people already living in that land, just created a mess. It created some other problems, right? But we're going to get into that later. So let's continue.
exile, there was continuous Jewish presence in the land. Islam, which is the religion of the Palestinian Arabs, was not even founded until the 7th century CE or AD. No independent Arab state has ever existed in the area known as Palestine.
Now, this doesn't make any sense. For the fact that no independent Palestinian state ever existed in the place called Palestine today does not mean that the Palestinian people do not exist, right? If you go to North America, if you go to South America, hundreds of years ago, there was no country per se. These were just independent tribes living in the land. So, for the fact that there was no country, does that mean that those people do not exist or they do not own that land? Does that mean that they had no right to that land? That it's only anybody who was able to set up a functional country that owns that land? That logic makes absolutely no sense because I hear this all the time where people say, well, there was never a country called Palestine. Well, duh, there was never a country called Palestine because it was under the Ottoman Empire. It's always been under one empire after the other. When the Jews were, when the Judean Empire fell or the Judean state fell in around 70 CE when the Romans sacked it and, sent many of the Jews out of Israel, right? The land was under Roman occupation and then it fell under Muslim occupation, right? And it became part of the Ottoman Empire, right? So all the countries in the Middle East right now, most of the countries in the Middle East right now, those countries were under they were under the Ottoman Empire. They were not independent countries. So can someone say, oh, because there was never a Syrian state in history, so right now the state of Syria doesn't make any sense? No, it doesn't make sense.
Myth number 2. Israel is the cause of the failure of land partition in the Middle East. This is, again, a pure lie. In 1917, the British promised the Jews the entire area of Palestine. At the time, Israel and Transjordan, which is today's Jordan. In 1920, the Arabs began pogroms, a mass murder of Jews, in Jerusalem as a sign of anger at the British mandate in Palestine. In 1922,
So let's pause there for a minute, right? So, okay. So what Ben is basically saying is that Palestine was promised to the Jews by the British. Now, you have to go back to history. You have to go back to 50 years before 1948 to understand what is happening in this period of time, right? A Jewish man called Herzl, who was born in Budapest, founded the Zionist movement, right? And his goal was to create a Jewish state in Palestine. And then he started working, he started lobbying, he started, in fact, he couched or he was selling the idea of a Jewish state as a colonial effort, so much so that he consulted with the colonial secretary of Britain, I think Joseph Chamberlain at that point in time, to ask his advice on how to colonize what Palestine for Jewish people, right? He also wrote a letter to Cecil Rhodes, who was the British colonial master in South Africa, right? Who was responsible for massacres of people in. It was responsible for the formation of Rhodesia and some of those southern African states, right? So it started as a colonial effort. There were people already living on that land, but they wanted to create a Jewish state. I have no problem with creating a Jewish state because the Jews had gone through a lot, right? But you don't rob Peter to pay Paul. So let's look at the partition itself. From the Balfour Declaration that we're going to partition Palestine into an Arab state and a Jewish state. The problem was that Jews at that time made up just about 6 to 10% of the Palestinian population. Yet, when the map was drawn, the Jewish state was given 56% of that land. By the formation of Israel in 1948, Jews controlled 62% of that land. And currently, they control 77% of that land. And then you ask yourself, how can 10% of the population get the majority of the land and you expect other people to be happy? And you say, oh, the Arabs rejected the partition plan. Duh. Yeah, of course they'll reject it. They are the majority, but yet you're giving them the smallest piece of the land, right? For the Jews, that was a gain for them. Even if they gave them 10% of the land, they didn't have that much in the first place. Jews only owned about 7% of the land of Palestine at that point in time, right? So you're giving them 56%. That's a good deal. They are going to take it, right? But you don't expect the person who had 100% before to now reduce his own percentage to 43%, and you're saying, oh, he's not taking this deal. So what happened in the 1920s was that because of the efforts to create a Jewish state in Palestine, Jewish migration was encouraged to Palestine at that point in time. So Jews began to started buying land in Palestine, and the Arabs, they knew what that was going to lead to. They knew what the Zionists wanted. They wanted a Jewish state in Palestine. The local Arabs did not want that. So there was a festival. After the festival, there was sort of a riot. Now, Ben Shapiro termed it as a pogrom. But if you look at what happened during that riot, was more accurately a riot, what happened was that of all the casualties, 5 Jews died and 4 Arabs died. So it wasn't a massacre of Jews. It was a riot that involved both sides. And then, there were casualties, right? But Ben is framing it as, oh, the Arabs attacked the Jews. And you keep hearing this framing all the time that, oh, the Jews are just benign, they are just benign actors. They only act to defend themselves. But the truth is that there were Jewish militias who were also attacking Arab villages. The violence was going both ways. In fact, let me share something else. And to just show, right? Share screen. Share. Okay. Okay, this should be this. Oh, not this. Not this. Not this. Share screen, share screen. United Nations. Okay, good. This should be it, right? Oh, not you. Where's my file? Just a minute. How slow was it? Yeah, can you see the screen? Can you see the screen? I think so. History. Okay. Found it. Where is it? History. Second. Yeah. Okay, good. So if you look at this place, right, it says that okay, let's just read from here. Palestine was among former Ottoman territories placed under UK administration by the League of Nations in 1922. All of these territories eventually became fully independent states, except Palestine, where, in addition to the rendering of administrative assistance and the advice of the British Mandate, incorporated the Balfour Declaration of 1917, expressing support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. During the mandates from 1922 to 1947, large-scale Jewish immigration, mainly from Eastern Europe, took place. Now, this was what the local Arabs were objecting to. They were objecting to large-scale Jewish immigration from what? From Europe. The numbers swelling in the 1930s with the Nazi persecution. Arab demands for independence and resistance to immigration led to rebellion in 1937, followed by continuing terrorism and violence from both sides. From both sides, the terrorism and the violence was from both sides. It wasn't just from one side. There were Jewish militias too that were attacking and sacking Arab villages. Continuing, after looking at alternatives, the UN proposed terminating the mandate and partitioning Palestine into two independent states, one Palestinian Arab and the other Jewish, with Jerusalem internationalized. One of the two envisaged states proclaimed its independence as Israel, and in the 1948 war involving neighboring Arab states, expanded to 77% of the territory of Mandate Palestine, right, including the larger part of Jerusalem. Over half of the Palestinian Arab population fled or were expelled. They fled or they were expelled. Now we'll go on to see later where we'll go on to see where Ben will talk about him. Ben will talk about how the Arabs just left. They just left on their own. Why did they leave? Do people just leave their homes if there's nothing chasing them? Right? People just leave their homes when there's nothing chasing them. That doesn't make any sense. All right. So let's continue.
The British government, in response, announced in a white paper that the Transjordan area, 70% of Palestine, would be sliced off and made an Arab state.
Now, historically, Jordan was never a part of the Jewish state. When the kingdom of Judah was in existence, it was never a part of Judah. There was a part of Jordan called Gilead, which was a part of the northern Israelite kingdom. Remember, Jews are descended from two peoples, right? Or one people who split into two: the northern kingdom of Israel, whose capital was in Samaria, and then the southern kingdom of Benjamin and Judah, right? The northern kingdom of Israel were called the 10 lost tribes, because somehow before there was a time where I think it was the Assyrians that put an end to the northern kingdom of Israel, and they were exiled and they were absorbed into other people, and then the Jews continued, right? So Jordan was never a part of the territory called Jordan, was never a part of the Jewish homeland.
That would become Jordan. In 1937, the Peel Commission recommended a rump state for the Jews, in which the British would retain control over Jaffa and Jerusalem, the Arabs would get the entire Negev and nearly the entirety of Judea and Samaria, and the Jews would get a tiny swath of territory along the coast, including Tel Aviv and Haifa. In 1939, the British, in response again to Arab pressure, restricted Jewish immigration to Palestine just as the Nazis began.
Yeah, so the Arabs did not want Jewish immigration from Palestine because they knew what the Zionists wanted. The Zionists wanted a majority Jewish state in Palestine. And the local peoples there, they do not want that. Now, let's go back to how the Arab states were getting independence in the 1940s and 1930s, when the Ottoman Empire, when the British decided to start giving independence the to the Arab states. They invoked the principle of um, self-determination, right? So for Syria, for Iraq, for Saudi Arabia, for some other places, those places got their independence. Mark you, those places also had Jews, right? Syria had Jews, Iraq had Jews, other places in the Middle East had Jews, and there were really no problems with them. So the issue was that Palestine should was supposed to have gotten its independence as a Palestinian state with both Jews and Arabs, just as in other parts of the Middle Eastern countries. But because of this partition, right, the idea was to create a Jewish state and an Arab state. And of course, the Arabs who lived there did not want that. They wanted their state. Like I mentioned earlier, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem said Jews who were there before 1948, of course, they are local, they are inhabitants of that place, they can stay. But Jews who were coming from Europe, they had no ties to the land, right? So, what rights did they have to come back to that place after 2,000 years and claim, oh, this is our homeland? And the funny thing is that the local Palestinians themselves are actually descended from Jews. They are descended from Jews who stayed back after the Roman expulsion, who took on Arab identities after the Muslim conquest. And this is very easily proven with genetic studies, right? Which show that Middle Eastern Jews and Palestinians share similar ancestry, like they're almost indistinguishable, right? So if you look at the Jews who stayed back, if you, the Palestinians are most closely related to Syrians and Middle Eastern Jews, Iraqi Jews, Jews in that stayed back in Jerusalem. And they are less, in fact, the Jews who stayed back and those in the Middle East are even less closely related to European Jews. The European Jews have more they have more European ancestry and all that. Yeah, but they are still Jews anyway. But if you want to look at the closeness, right, Middle Eastern Jews are closer to Palestinians than they are to European Jews. So this might just be a case of, because these people they are now Arabs, they have not taken in an Arab identity. They are seen as, not they're not Jews. But if you really wanted to go by, the genetic, lineage of these people, you would find that most of them are probably ethnic Jews.
in World War II and just before the Holocaust. Nonetheless, the Jews sided with the Brits, the Arabs sided with Hitler. In 1948,
which is not true. Yeah, of course, there are Arab states who sided with Germany and all that. But also, there were Arabs who fought for the British. For example, 12,000 Palestinian Arabs fought for the British, right? So it's not a clear-cut situation of all the Arabs were evil. They were fighting. They were fighting for the Nazis. They were fighting for Germany, and they wanted to wipe out the Jews, right? That it wasn't as clear-cut as that. They were competing interests, right? Some aligned with the British, some aligned uh, with Germany, and that's what happens in war.
the British mandate ended and Israel declared its independence.
David Ben-Gurion read the Proclamation of Independence to 13 other members of the Israel Provisional National Council. Israel had taken its place among the nations of the world.
In 1964, with the Arabs still in full control of the Gaza Strip and West Bank, the Palestine Liberation Organization.
There was something that I forgot to mention about Jewish militias as well. In 1946, there was the King David hotel bombing, which was carried out by a Jewish terrorist group called Irgun. I think IRGUN. The leader of that terrorist group, Menachem Begin, became an Israeli prime minister. The eighth prime minister of Israel was actually a member of that group that carried out that attack that killed up to 100 people, and so many other attacks on British and Arab posts. These were things that were happening, but the narrative is that, oh, it was just the Arabs attacking. Both sides were attacking themselves because they had competing interests, and when they're competing interests like that, people fight over land, people fight over property. Even with families that are related, they fight over land. right? So it's not a one side was fighting and the other side was simply defending itself. That's not the case. It wasn't that, oh, the Arabs attacked the Jews and they had no they had no other option but to respond or to retaliate. That wasn't the case, right? So if Palestine was not divided, what would most likely have happened was that there would be a Palestinian state mostly populated by Arabs with the Jewish minority, and things life would have gone on as as it is, as simple as it is, as it happened in Syria, as it happened in Iraq, as it happened in other parts of the Middle East where they got their independence. Jews were in those places too, although they had to leave later or they were expelled later. But we'll get to that point and explain why that happened.
Was founded, calling for the destruction of Israel. Here is a contemporaneous British report on the first chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization.
One of the most extreme anti-Israeli politicians in the Arab world, Ahmed el-Shukeri, the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization. As the spokesman for 1 million Palestine refugees, he's fanned the flames of hatred for Israel with unflagging energy.
So listen to what they're saying. 1 million Palestinian refugees. How the hell do people become refugees? What's the meaning of a refugee? It means displaced people, whether internally or internationally, right? For you to become a refugee, it means that you have been displaced from your home. So how the hell did the Palestinians become refugees? Did they fall from the sky and just suddenly became refugees? Of course not. They were expelled from their homes. That's how they became refugees in the first place.
Energy.
In 1967, the Arab League announced the three no's: no peace, no recognition, no negotiations. With all of Israel's enemies mobilizing against it, Israel launched a preemptive strike on the Egyptian Air Force, inaugurating the 1967 Six-Day War. This ended with Israel gaining
So the 1967 war, with some of the readings I've done, the Soviets were fingered in this because they told the Egyptians that the Jews, the Israelis were going to attack them, and that's why Egypt began amassing troops at the border, and Israel saw that as a sign of aggression and then preemptively attacked, right? But Ben is going to say something almost so ridiculous now, but
all of Israel's enemies mobilizing against it, Israel launched a preemptive strike on the Egyptian Air Force, inaugurating the 1967 Six-Day War. This ended with Israel gaining miraculously the Sinai Desert, the Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip, Judea and Samaria, now known as the West Bank, as well as the entirety of Jerusalem.
So did you catch that? Israel gained those territories miraculously. With the power of the gun and with the power of military might. I didn't know that was how miracles happened, right? Military might, they're miracles. Israel gained those territories miraculously. They were not captured territories. They were not territories that were seized from the enemy. It happened miraculously. And this is the facts guy, right? The guy who is saying facts over feelings, facts over every other thing. How is this a factual thing to say? They captured those places, they gained those places miraculously.
In 1973, the Arabs launched all-out war again, this time on Yom Kippur. Israel survived and gained territory.
Now, so the thing I'll say is that I will concede that and say this, that the Arabs were not ready to share Palestine with the Jews, especially the Jewish diaspora. They were not willing to do that. They were not going to accept that, which I think is a big failing. I think they should have accepted, some sort of coexistence with the Jews. But the truth is also the Jews were not going to, they did not want to have to coexist with Arabs within a Jewish state. And I know people will bring this up, that there are Arabs currently living in Jewish states. Of course there are. 20% of the citizens of Israel are Arabs, right? But what that tells you is that 80% is Jewish. They wanted a Jewish majority state. And I read somewhere where the president of the first prime minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, was saying, yes, let us accept this deal now, but there's also room for expansion. There's also room for expansion of our territory, which is something that they've done over the course of Israeli history, right? Starting from 62%, now at 77% of the land that was supposed to be shared between Jews and the Arabs, right? And you're asking, why are they not accepting our deal? right? You're blockading part of their people. There are people basically living in concentration camps. Well, I wouldn't use the word concentration camps. Well, they are living in conditions where they are being blockaded by a foreign power. They don't have a government of their own. Israel controls everything that goes in and out of Gaza and the West Bank. And you're asking, why are these people not, why don't they want peace? Israel keeps increasing settlements, right? You keep building more Jewish settlements in Palestinian lands, and you're asking, oh, why are these people, why don't they want peace?
In 1979, Israel gave the Sinai back to Egypt in return for peace. In 1993, Israel agreed to the Oslo Accords, which promised a step-by-step process to establish a Palestinian state. In 1998, Israel conceded yet more territory.
So let's talk about the Oslo Accords, right? The Oslo Accords, which was signed between the Palestinians and the Jews. So there were certain proposals. Israel was going to pull back from certain territory. But I can tell you that 20 years down the line, Israel hasn't done that. So you say something, you say you're going to do something, you don't do it, you keep increasing Jewish settlements on Palestinian land, and then you say, oh, but these people don't want peace. We have said, we've agreed we're going to do this, but they don't want peace. Funny thing, the Jewish prime minister, Rabin, who signed that Oslo Accord, was assassinated by an ultra-nationalist right-wing Jew for that accord. He was assassinated because he signed that peace agreement with the Palestinians. Even Benjamin Netanyahu held protests against this prime minister at that time, that he was against the Jewish people, that the Jewish people should not they shouldn't concede any land to the Palestinians. And you're asking, oh, these people don't want peace. We want to live peacefully with them. Yeah, you want to live peacefully with them. You say you are going to pull back from certain territory. In 20 years, you haven't done that, but you keep expanding your territories. And you're saying you want peace.
To the Palestinian Authority under the prime ministership of Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2000, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak offered Yasser Arafat, the terrorist leader of the Palestinian Authority, 91% control over the West Bank in contiguous territory and an Israeli security presence along 15% of the border with Jordan. Arafat walked away from the table and began the Second Intifada, a massive terror wave that ended with the death of thousands of Jews. In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip. Hamas immediately took it over and began using it as a base for terrorist activity. That continues until this day. In 2008, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert offered even more than Barak in terms of territory, with some land swaps to maintain Jewish-populated areas in exchange for some Israeli territory. Olmert even offered to relinquish Israeli sovereignty at the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, as well as the entire Old City of Jerusalem to a 5-member non-sovereign international trusteeship comprising Israel, the PA, Jordan, the US, and Saudi Arabia. PA head Mahmoud Abbas.
Now, Ben is cherry-picking these facts. He's cherry-picking these things to, paint his own narrative as, we're offering all this peace, deals, and nobody was willing to take it. When the fact is that many of these conditions set by these processes were totally heavily in favor of Israel. They were heavily in favor of Israel. And the Palestinians felt that those negotiating for the Palestinians felt that this was not a fair deal. This is not a fair deal. We're not going to accept this deal. You come with a better deal, we'll probably talk, right? So I keep asking, so why has the Oslo Accords, why has it not been honored up until this point? The agreement that was made by Rabin, why has it not been honored? Why has it not been implemented? If Israel is so, if they really wanted to do that, why have they not done that?
Walked away without a counteroffer. Myth number 3. Israel expelled all Palestinian Arabs from British Mandate Palestine. This is, again, a lie. Israel's founding documents asked Arabs to stay. Israel's Declaration of Independence, in the middle of an ongoing war with Arab nations, reads, quote, "We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions." Debate has raged for decades over how many Arabs left the nascent state of Israel thanks to expulsion and how many left because they were told to leave by their own leaders. An estimated 250,000 to 300,000 refugees left before their homes were even in a war zone.
We didn't compel them to leave.
So, okay.
They left on their own will, or rather on the will of the Arab leaders, who advised them even before trouble started.
So the question is, why would people leave their homes? I really don't, I'm still, it doesn't make any sense to me. If these people had the assurances of the Jewish state, of the newly formed Jewish state of Israel, that they were not going to be attacked, right? Why would they leave? It doesn't make any sense that they would leave their homes and basically become refugees. And since they've left, they've not been able to come back, right? If Israel was so magnanimous that they didn't mean harm to these people, they should have allowed them to come back. So why have they not come back? Why are they not allowed back into their homes? Some of them are living in camps where they can basically see their former homes from a mile away.
Collapse of Arab society during the 1947-48 war, leaving many Arabs without a means of support, has been well documented.
Israel will do everything in its power to help the resettlement of these refugees by paying compensation and by other means.
Hundreds of thousands.
So why hasn't that happened? Right, you're giving your commitment to the resettlement of these refugees, where you're going to give them compensation. But why hasn't that happened?
Thousands of these refugees ended up in the West Bank and Gaza, which remained Arab territory until 1967. Furthermore, Arab nations refused to take in hundreds of thousands of Arabs, turning their co-religionists into refugees who have maintained that status for literally decades.
This is a very, very funny point. I keep hearing this point that, oh, why don't the other Arab states just let them in? Why didn't just, after all, they are co-religionists, right? And then I ask you, why don't the US just open its border so that people from Mexico who are also Christians, why don't you just let them in? People from all other parts of North America, why don't the US just open their border so that they just come in? You're forgetting to understand that countries have their own policies, countries have their own interests. They all know the other Arab states, they owe nothing to the Palestinian people to let them in, right? They are not the ones who push them out of their homes. So for the people who push them out of their homes to be asking other people to take them in and saying you are doing something wrong for not taking them in. No, you did something wrong by kicking them out of their homes in the first place. It's not the responsibility of any other Arab states to take them in because they share the same religion. Is that how the world should be? That only people who share the same religion should help each other, right? Is that how it should be?
Situation unparalleled in human history. Fully 62% of such refugees live outside the West Bank and Gaza Strip, according to the UNRWA.
Ben keeps calling them refugees, and I keep asking, why are they refugees? How did they become refugees? If they weren't kicked out, if they weren't expulsed, if they were allowed to go back to their homes, why are they still refugees? You hear of refugees in places that are war-torn. You have, terrorists are attacking people. People can't go back to their homes, and they have to disperse to other parts for safety. That's where you hear of refugees. So if Israel is this bastion of democracy, upholding human rights, as we are told, why are there refugees living at their borders? Literally living at their borders. And Israel is asking Egypt and other places to take them in. Okay, why don't you take them in as well?
Meanwhile, Israel, tiny Israel, took in over 800,000 Jews expelled from Arab lands between 1948 and 1951 and never asked for land to be.
And you ask yourself, why were they expulsed? Why were they expelled? That 1948? Well, first of all, it was a response to what the formation of the state of Israel, right? The Arabs were angry. Now, it's an absolutely wrong thing for them to have expelled the Jews from their homes, because Jews who lived in Iraq were Iraqis, Jews who lived in Syria were Syrians, right? So it's a wrong thing for the Arabs to have expelled them from their homes. But that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is that Israel actively wanted Jews to return home. They actively wanted Jews to return to the land of Israel so that they can build up their numbers, because they needed that numbers to maintain a Jewish majority. So it wasn't out of quote unquote goodwill, oh, we're just accepting them. No, it was a strategic political move, right? To shore up the numbers of Jewish people in the land of Israel to maintain a majority. That was why Israel wanted them. And that's why you still have the laws of return today, where Jews from basically anywhere in the world can apply for citizenship in Israel and get it and get land, while people whose ancestors lived there for hundreds of years are pushed out because somehow the ancestors of the European Jews left 2,000 years ago, and now based on that 2,000 years ago, they have a right to a land that their ancestors have not been in for 2,000 years. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Be returned to those Jews. Myth number 4: Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is most certainly not an apartheid state. Arab citizens of Israel have the same rights as Jewish citizens. 20% of all citizens of Israel are Arab. The vast majority of Palestinians live under Palestinian rule in the West Bank.
They live under what sort of Palestinian rule? Ask yourself. Are they living under a government of their own? Are they living under an internationally recognized government of their own? Do they control their borders? Do they control their electricity? Do they control their water? Do they control things that come into their land? Do they even control their taxes? I read somewhere that the taxes in the West Bank are collected by Israel, who now remits it to the authorities in the West Bank, to the Palestinian authorities in the West Bank. So you're saying these people live in territories controlled by their own government, yet they don't control anything. They don't control. Israel literally during this conflict has turned off electricity and water to the to the people in Gaza. Are a people who rule themselves. Are people who rule themselves. Can that happen to them? Can that happen? Even as Russia and Ukraine are fighting, Russia can't just turn off. They can't just turn off things in Ukraine. They can't just turn off the electricity in Ukraine. They can't just turn off the gas in Ukraine. But what does this tell you? That these people are under sort of an occupation by Israel. That's why Israel can afford to do that.
All Arabs in the Gaza Strip lived under Hamas rule. Israel's population, again, is 20% Arab. Arab parties have sat in the Israeli government, and Arab sits on Israel's Supreme Court. There are 0 Jews living under Palestinian rule.
Well, of course, Arab politicians are living in Israel because they are Arab citizens. They are Jewish citizens, right? They are Israeli citizens, right? It's not possible to totally expel a people. And if you go back far enough in other Arab states, there were Jews who were in important positions as well. Throughout the Middle East, Jews participated in Middle Eastern politics and in their life, wherever they lived. Even in Europe, Jews were always involved in almost every level of government and politics and economy and all that. Yeah, of course, when people live within a territory, they're going to do that. And you can understand the context of why Jews would not want to live amongst the Palestinians. It's a dicey situation, right? Now, I'm not holding any brief for the Palestinians. I think that they should look for a way to peace. I just think that both sides are obstinate. I think that the Palestinians, it's just a crazy situation, and all this boils down to religion. All this boils down to religious identity. One is Muslim Arab and the other is Jewish. That's what. If by the time the European Jews decided to come back to Israel, if all the people living in Israel at that time identified as Jews, they wouldn't even have asked for a partition in the first place. But just because they identified as Arabs, oh no, let's have our own state and let the Arabs go their own way.
The only apartheid state is any state of Palestine. All of these myths have consequences. All of these lies have consequences. They lead to a pseudo-sophisticated context that allows for the murder of Jews. It allows people in the West to believe that the grievances that are openly articulated by the Palestinian Authority, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas are actually about territory. Hamas openly calls for the murder of every Jew in the region. The Palestinian Authority gives actual bounties to the families of terrorists. Islamic Jihad has the same exact goals as Hamas. When evil people say they want to wipe Jews off the face of the earth, we ought to listen, not make up silly excuses as to why they don't actually mean what they say. The consequences of buying your own lies, not even their lies, your own lies, is dead Jews.
Yeah, and the consequences of buying Israeli lies is also, dead Palestinians, right? So you can't put it on the Palestinians that they're telling lies. There was a clip of Netanyahu where he was basically, saying how he, good Lord, it's crazy. That's crazy. Well, so back to this conversation, right? I absolutely recognize the state of Israel and its sovereignty in Palestine currently. And the sole reason I do that is because they conquered that land in 1948 going forward, not because of some 2,000-year-old history. Because if by that logic, right, then the other people in America should leave as well, right? The native Indians or the Native Americans who are the original owners of the land, they have the right to kick every other person out of the land and say, no, this is our land. You can't build your country here. So if Jews are claiming to be the original owners of the land, and that's why they have a right to that land, then quote unquote, every indigenous people have a right to do the same thing to other people who have come to live amongst them. But that's not how things function. The US is not suddenly going to give up its land to the Native Americans because of some, oh, they are indigenous. No, the US, they conquered that land and it's now their country. People acquire property through conquest, and I accept that. And now, if they said that, I would have absolutely no issues. If Israel comes out and tells that, you know what, we conquered this land, that's why it's ours, we're going to keep it. Absolutely no issues with that. They conquered the land. People acquire property through that way, right? But to tell me that the reason why you have a right to this land is because 2,000 years ago, your ancestors were here. Come on. Even African Americans cannot make that claim in Africa, and they have been in America less than 1,000 years. They can't come to Africa and say, oh, we own this land in Africa because our parents, our forefathers were taken away from Africa to 700 years ago, 400 years ago. That's absolutely not going to happen. And then the religious claim of, oh, our God gave it to us. Well, we're just going to put that aside. And then the other claim, the genetic claim. From the genetic angle, the Palestinians themselves share ancestry with ancient Jews, which means that they even have a stronger claim than European Jews to the land. When you do the comparative genetic analysis, you'll find that Palestinians are closely related to Jews in the Middle East and Jews who stayed back, much more than they are to European Jews, who are the ones basically colonizing the land of Israel. So, well, I think I've had my monologue. So I'm just going to put the link in the description. Let's, let's talk. I'll put the link in the chat. Anyone wants to call in, let's have a conversation about this, because you hear when Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, why? They shouldn't pull out. Because I didn't have all this understanding then. I had always thought it was Jewish land. Oh, they've always been there, so they should always been there, right? I didn't understand these other intricacies. So it's not a question of it's not a question. Esther, you said nobody is colonizing anything. Well, if you read the documents of the people who founded the Zionist movement, they literally used the word colonize. They literally used that word. Let me share something, right? Boop. Herzl. Okay, good. Share, right? So this is Herzl and England. Herzl, the founder of the Zionist movement, right? Good. So let me read this. It says, after the failure of his negotiations, talking about Herzl, with the Sultan of Turkey in 1902, Herzl decided to embark upon a new line of approach, which he termed the English combination direct from Chamberlain, right? Leopold Greenberg was able to arrange an interview with the English colonial secretary, Joseph Chamberlain, and this took place on October 22, 1902. What occurred at this interview, as well as at that with the Foreign Secretary Lord Lansdowne, is vividly described in Herzl's diaries. At these interviews, Herzl was able to persuade the British statesman to a positive attitude as regards a Jewish colonization in the El Arish area of Egypt. These events are known from Herzl's diary entries from the protocol of the 6th Zionist Congress in Basel, 1903, from the various histories on Zionism, as well as from many other Hazel biographies. So he was speaking to the British colonial secretary, talking about Jewish colonization of the land of Israel, and you're telling me that nobody's colonizing anybody. I got a copy of Judenstaat, which is Hazel's book, which literally means the Jewish state, and I've been reading it. And multiple places they made reference to colonization. And they made reference to the fact that you cannot keep a colony without some sort of force, without some sort of military occupation. They literally said that. So probably people should do some reading. People should do some research on their own instead of just thinking that everything that the superficial things that you see, the superficial things that you understand, you think it's true. I used to think these things are true. I used to think that the Palestinians are just terrorists. They just hate Israel. They don't like Israel to exist. There are other contexts to these things. Now I understand that a certain religion is problematic, right? But that is not the only aspect to this conflict, right? If it were simply, based on that alone, I would definitely be on the side of the Jews 100%, right? But I know that there are other contexts to these things. That's why I can be objective about it and not, allow my sentiments to take to get the better of me. Hey, Stanley, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually think you did an excellent breakdown of this.
Thank you.
So, my opinion is, well, kind of like I really don't know enough to be very like it's the Jews' fault or it's the Palestinians' fault. I don't think anyone's hands on either side are clean.
Sure.
And it just annoys me that, well, first off, now this is going to be weird. I think America, or folks like Ben Shapiro, and there are plenty of people on plenty of leftists in the U.S. who are like, Palestinians, right or wrong. And I honestly think America our role should really only be to like sort it out. Seeing the left and the right just take sides. Your point about most of the people that are taking sides honestly haven't done the research you have. And the thing that really annoys me, and there are black leftists who essentially call it an apartheid state, or this is like Jim Crow. That is so wrong. I have to usually just stop listening to whoever is pushing that logic. This is not American Jim Crow. The history is totally different. They're superficial comparisons, but you cannot say that, Gaza is under Jim Crow. Nothing like Jim Crow. It's as bad or worse, but it's not the same.
Levi, welcome.
Hey Charles, hey Stanley. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm good. I don't know if you can hear me. Is there any echo on my side?
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you very well.
All right. Stanley, please continue. You're saying something.
No, I'm pretty much done. I think America needs to be a lot more neutral. I think the comparisons to Jim Crow, the Jim Crow South, and even apartheid, there are superficial, similarities, but we need to come up with a third category. Okay.
Yeah.
What's happening is not like the Jim Crow South. It's not like apartheid South Africa.
Yep.
It's a different animal.
True.
And
And that's
that,
why.
to me, that's step one. Let's stop comparing.
True, and that's why I didn't really contend the point that it was not an apartheid state. Of course, it's not an apartheid state, but it is an oppressive state in the sense that there are people that it's literally blockading. There are people that Israel is literally controlling their controlling their access to the outside world. People who don't have a internationally recognized government of their own. So there is some sort of oppression going on there, but it's certainly not apartheid. So, Levi, let's hear you.
All right, Mr. Charles, shout out to you for creating this platform for everyone to just come up here and speak and give platform to opinions.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna respond to what you said, having a holiday date. But the thing is this: I don't believe that the situation between Israel and I would say Hamas right now, because a lot of people are peddling the narrative that Hamas is somehow separate from the Palestinian people. Should I say ideologically? Something that I do not 100% believe. I do not subscribe to that at all. I believe that they are a sizable population of the Palestinian people that ideologically support what Hamas is doing regarding the attacking of Jewish people and all that. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but I think it has to do with the religion Islam. If I'm allowed to say this, because I mean a lot of these platforms can just, but anyways, I think it has to do with the religion, and this is what a lot of people are not talking about. I think a lot of conservatives are leaning into this idea, but nope, I've not really seen anybody take the angle of, oh, it's a religious war that Hamas, because they are Islamic, obviously they're trying to like wipe out the Jewish states, because nobody's saying all these things. Well, not nobody, but a lot of people are not leaning into this idea, and that is what I want to bring up. I don't
Okay,
think
Well,
so
it's
you're not
necessarily
watching. Plenty of people
oppressive,
on the
because, like
right
I
are
said
saying it.
before, the Jews, they are in control of the land now, right?
so Levi,
And since they own the land, they're in control of the land. At least they have been able to establish themselves. We could say reasonably peaceful. I'm talking about the Israeli controlled territory. It's reasonably peaceful, and Palestinians can live there with Jewish people, and they can live, even if it's arguable to say that they are living peacefully, but it's not like what is going on right now. So
okay, so
I think the Palestinians cannot deal with um, Hamas as an entity, because it's oppressive in nature. Hamas, it's as a terrorist organization, is oppressive in nature, and they cannot deal with that. And then they are using, in my opinion, Hamas is using the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian people are using Hamas. That's what I think.
let me respond to
And
this.
nobody seems to be saying anything about this. Everybody seems to be accusing Israel for retaliating. Because I watched Piers Morgan interviewing Mohammed Hijab about what's going on, and his attack was he admitted a little bit that, oh, what Hamas did was wrong, but he didn't want to talk about how that Israel has the right to retaliate when you fly, you parachute terrorists into Israel, and then you kill people, you take hostages, and you expect Israel just to sit there and take it.
Okay,
Israel is not
so
a punk. They have the military might, they have the military strength, and they
so
are
so
going to
Levi,
retaliate. It's as
can I
simple as
can I
that.
can I respond?
Israel own
So
the land now. We
can
can
I
talk
can I
about
respond?
how, oh, they are colonizers in quotes, but they control the land now. They have a territory to defend. They have a Jewish home to defend, because they can say that because they were there over 2,000 years ago. You cannot deny that fact. It's should I say, it's biblical history. It is secular history that at some point
Le-
Jewish people were in that
Levi,
land. It's
Levi,
unarguable. So they are in
let me ask
control
you a
of that
question.
land right now.
Let me
And
ask you a
they
question,
say,
Levi.
okay, we are going to have a Jewish state. The
So Levi,
Palestinians are
you're
just
you I've gotten your point. Can you listen? So I have one question for you. Can you hear me, Levi?
going to have.
Can you hear me? Hello,
I can.
Levi. Can you hear me? Well, so let me just make my point. You're right and you're wrong, right? Can you hear me now, Levi? I wanted to ask you a question. It's gone. Okay. If you can come back in, you come back in.
Well,
The
go ahead
idea
and
that
make your
nobody is
point.
the idea that nobody is saying it's a religious war is just absolutely ridiculous, because there are many people who are making that argument that it's a religious war. I have made that argument in the past, but I totally missed the historical context and other things. It's so easy for you to say it's a religious issue, right? When you look at how when the let me not even go there, right? The truth is there the talking about Hamas and the Palestinian people. I don't think you can even separate both in a sense, because Hamas is the de facto ruler of Palestine. And yes, we can say they are terrorists. We can say that their actions are terrorist actions, right? They are fighting for their people using terrorist methods. Now, their people might not totally sanction what they're doing, but they are the representatives of their people. But I will still not hold the Palestinians responsible for what Hamas does or did, as much as I would not hold the people of the US responsible for all the atrocities that the US government does around the world, right? So you can even have a legitimately constituted government and it does shit. It kills innocent people, and then you can't put that on the people. You can't say, oh, because Americans, because they elected their officials, then the atrocities they committed in Iraq, the atrocities that they committed in so many other parts of the world, then it's the fault of the American people. It's the government. The government is corrupt. So yes, Hamas is the government of Gaza as it stands, right? Hamas is the government of Gaza as it stands, and they are using terrorist actions. But these things are not happening in a vacuum. They are not just attacking Israel for the sake of attacking Israel. They're not just attacking Israel because they hate Jews. Yeah, there's a part of that. There's a component of that, but that's not the biggest issue here. That's not the bigger issue here. The bigger issue is that these people were driven from their homes. And then we can accept that, yes, Israel has the land now because they conquered it. I have no problem with admitting that. But don't tell me that you have the land because your ancestors were there 2,000 years ago. So, Levi, I have a question for you. If you can hear me, can you hear me?
Um, I can hear you. Kind of
Okay, good.
lost connection at the point.
So, Levi, I want to guess you're an honorable man, right?
Of course, yeah.
Good. You're an honorable man, just like me. Now, our people trace our origins to the Benin Kingdom, right?
Yeah, if I remember my peoples and culture correctly.
Mm-hmm. So the Urobos, they
Yeah.
trace their origin to the Benin Kingdom. Can you go to Benin today and tell the Benin people that because your ancestors came from there 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that is your land now, that the Benin people should vacate for you?
I'm going to answer that question this way, and I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So, like I said before, the powerful people, they are going to dominate, and they're going to take over, and they are going to be able to establish control over a territory that they decide. It's as simple as that. I mean,
Good. So this is about
I,
power. So if you say that, I agree. No disagreement. But don't tell me that the reason why they have legitimacy to that land is because they lived there 2,000 years ago. That's bollocks. The reason why they have the land now is because they were powerful enough to take it from the people that currently live there. So just as in the case of the example I just gave you, the Yoruba people, if they want to go to Benin and claim that territory, they have to do it with force. They can't go there and say our ancestors came from here 200 years ago, so this is our land, so vacate. It's not going to happen.
of
Nobody's
course
going
they
to honor that claim.
of
Nobody's going to
course they
honor that claim.
of course they can say that because I mean any
Levi,
the Jewish
go
people
to Benin.
claim
Go
that
go to Benin and tell the Benin man that his land is your land, that you want to create your state there, that he should live, and see what happens.
just hold on, Mr. Charles. Let me finish my point. Whether or not the Jewish people lay claim unquote to the land as their ancestral land or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is the powerful people will always take over the land. So it's just rhetoric, and I don't think it's important in a conversation as to whether the Jews deserve to be in the land or deserve to colonize the land, as
But
people
that was
say.
your
Or
argument. Your argument was that they were there 2,000 years ago, so they should have the land. But I'm telling you that I agree with you when you say it is about power, when you say it's about they conquered it. I made that earlier in my stream that I recognize the sovereignty of the Jews over Israel today, or over Palestine, because they conquered it in 1948. That's as much as I can concede. But to tell me that the reason why they are the legitimate owners of that land is because they were there 2,000 years ago, it doesn't carry any substantive weight. It doesn't mean anything, right? 2,000 years ago is such a long time.
I
A
guess
hundred
I
years ago
guess
is such a
I
long time.
I guess that's where we'll have
I
to agree to
actually have a
disagree
question.
because
All right, Stanley.
okay, go ahead, Stanley.
Well, no, my question is, even if I agree with Charles, if it's about power, at least we understand that, might makes right. My question is, do you think that the Palestinians should essentially, this is like, hey, we have the power, y'all Palestinians need to just accept it and conform. People don't work like that.
Is is a question for me, Stanley?
The bottom line is, do
Right.
you expect the Palestinians to just go, "Hey, we're conquered. We're going to do it your way"? It
I
it's
think I think
not going to work like that.
I think the reason why Palestinians have any say in the matter in the first place is because Israel is playing nice, in my opinion. I think they should have honestly, if I were in charge of Israel, I'm going to try as much as possible to minimize my the way I approach the situation in terms of using force. So because I care about people and I care about humanity, but I will totally distinguish them now.
You're
And this another
you're
thing I
uh,
was talking
you're
about.
coming in and out.
Yeah, your network is not very stable, so we can't really hear what you're saying. Right.
I mean, so it is what it is.
Levi, we can't hear you at all. It's breaking. It's breaking. So this is a very complex situation. But if people took their time to just do a little reading, you'll find that it's a lot more different from what is being painted out there. The painting is that the Palestinians are evil. They are just because of their religion. I can tell you that I have no love for your religion, but I'm not going to say because of that I won't be charitable to them. I'm not going to say I'm going to be uncharitable to them because of that. No, I'm going to look at it from a very balanced and objective point of view and say this isn't This isn't principally about religion. It's about lands, about property,
And
it's about
power.
power, it's about control, right? So these are two groups who are jostling for power, and one group seems to be, more powerful now, and that's why they were able to take the land. If the other group was more powerful, they would have control of the land, and power keeps changing hands, right? Throughout the history of the world, their power has changed hands multiple times. Even Jerusalem itself, during the Crusades, why were the Crusades started? Right, it was to return Jerusalem to Christian hands. And then the Christians got there and they massacred Muslims, they massacred Jews. And then the reverse happened. The Muslims got there and they massacred Christians and they massacred Jews. It just seems like those Jews have been taking the brunt of, Christian and Muslim violence for centuries. As a Christian, I can say that. I can admit it. I can admit that part of the reason why we're having this problem in the Middle East today is because of the rabid anti-Semitism of Christian Europe, right? Because if the Europeans were not so anti-Semitic, there would have been no need for European Jews to leave their homes in Europe to go and found a state in the Middle East because they were Europeans. A German Jew is not so different from a German ethnically. If you remove all the cultural acculturations, right? If you remove their dress, their language, if you remove every other thing, a German Jew is no different from a German. A Polish Jew is not different from a Polish
Well,
person.
at least
An
not
Iraqi Jew
in
is
the
not different from an
training,
Iraqi.
and the way you think about property. That power. Hey, we have more guns than you, therefore we control the territory. That is very European.
Exactly. You need to read more about Herzl. You need to they it was the, it was literally a colonialist movement, like a colonialist movement. They used the language colonize. We want to colonize this place. And they worked with people who were successful in colonizing places. They worked with Cecil Rhodes, who was a colonizer in South Africa. They could have worked if they were indigenous people. They could have worked with, let's work with the Native Americans. Let's see how they were able to do it. Let's work with the native South Africans. Let's see how they were able to do it. But no, they worked with those who were successful in colonizing people or lands, and it was strictly about power, nothing else. Levi, welcome back.
But I also want to make a political point,
Thank you.
and a
Can you hear me?
lot of people on the yeah, we can. Let me make a quick political point though. A lot of people, Ben Shapiro's one of them. A lot of people on the American right go, well, we equate Palestinians with Hamas because Hamas is a duly elected government. However, the history of it is Hamas was elected in 2006. There's been no election since then. And um, Israel itself had a hand in the founding of Hamas, much like Americans and the Mujahideen. It's Israel has a hand in why Hamas is still here. We never hear about that either.
True. I think there were reports that even came up that the Netanyahu government has been, propping up Hamas, funding them, and all that. Basically playing them against other fundamentalist Islamic groups
Yeah.
in that region as well. So
And from what I've understood, part of the reason Hamas is being, kind of like, hey, we need to do this now, is there a lot there are a lot of Saudi Arabia, a lot of Israel is starting to do Abraham Accords, and essentially Hamas, and this is my personal opinion, Hamas is like, what about us? Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all these, fellow quote fellow religionists are starting to like have a monetary and economic sort of relationship with Israel and Hamas. Is way back in the background too. So anyway, I'll stop.
Um,
Yeah.
I have a point to make. Is I would like to look at this from the Israeli point of view because judging by what has gone on in their history, because of the atrocities that have been committed against them for for a very long time, you know, and though the I mean we all know what happened to the Jewish people. Over 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. So can we lend a relevance to the Jews for the way they are dealing with this situation? Because the Jewish state is the only place that Jewish people can call their own, and it's the only territory that they can safely say that they can be able to exist in peace without being threatened by indigenous people or native people from other countries, because Jews are obviously scattered across the world. But the Jewish state is the only place where Jewish people can safely say that they have ownership, and they are not afraid of any threats from,
So
you know,
so
Well,
like they
so
that's
did
Levi,
just
at some point.
materially untrue.
Levi. So let me say I agree with you to the extent that the Jews have been victimized in almost every place that they've lived in. So I understand the desire to have a place where Jews exclusively control, where they can determine their own fate and destiny. I understand that 100%, right? And I support that 100%. But I would not want to achieve that at the expense of another people, because those people, they also deserve to be able to control their destiny. They also deserve to be able to control their land, their political future, and every other thing. So why is Jewish interest, why is Jewish legitimate Jewish interest, why does it trump the legitimate interests of the Palestinian people? That's the question. It's not a question of, oh, the Jews are good or the Jews are bad. No, this is not a bad or good thing. It's not a bad guy, good guys situation in my mind. And people can point to the atrocities of Hamas, which everybody has denounced, which I continue to denounce. And I continue to say that Hamas, they're terrorists, they're a terrorist group that deserve nothing less than what terrorists deserve. But you are missing the bigger context. You are also missing the fact that in the past, verifiably, Jewish militias also carried out terrorist attacks against Arabs. I mentioned one very prominent one, the King David Hotel bombing in 1946, even before the state of Israel was formed. And the leader of that organization went on to become a prime minister in Israel. Those guys were using violence. They were chasing Palestinians out of their homes. Do you think the Palestinians just got up and left their homes and became refugees for nothing? Something was chasing them. It was violence. People were chasing them to kill them. That's why they left. That's why they ran away. And they've not been able to come back to their homes. So to say that, oh, we're looking at a good guy, bad guy situation, you're missing the bigger context of this conflict. We can condemn the individual actions and say, yes, what Hamas did is wrong. They shouldn't be attacking civilians. They shouldn't be doing this. Yes, but Hamas didn't just attack for no reason, right? We can say that anti Semitic Germany attacked the Jews for no reason. Hitler killed the Jews for no reason. The Jews were not a threat to Hitler, right? But in this case, these people's lands was taken away from them. And we've said it over and over again. The land was not barren when European Jews came in. In fact, there were Jews living in the land at that point in time. Those Jews were native Jews. The Arabs there had no issues with them. They had coexisted in the Ottoman Empire for centuries together. They had no issues with them. The issues arose when Jews from Europe decided to make that their homeland, and not just to make it their homeland, to make it a Jewish state, a majority Jewish state. knowing full well that there are Arabs all over. How do you achieve that? Right? Immigration and then expulsion of the local Arab population, which is exactly what happened. So if I'm saying that, I understand where the Jewish people are coming from. I also understand where the Palestinians are coming from. And I'm human. I'm not going to say Jewish interests should trump the interest of the Palestinian people. No, you don't rob Peter to pay Paul. You don't say you want to solve one problem, you create another problem. And I keep saying this is a European problem. This is a problem of the British Empire. This is a problem of Europe. It's anti-Semitism that drove Jews from Europe to the land of Israel.
Yes.
So if they were not that anti-Semitic, there was really no reason for Jews. It's just like people migrate. Like in my country, we have the Hausas, we have the Fulanis here. They are all over Africa. They are multiple countries. They're in Niger, they're in Cameroon, they're in Mali, right? They are citizens of wherever they are. They are the same ethnicity, but they are citizens of wherever they are. So should they now say, oh, we all originated from Niger, so let's pull ourselves from Nigeria, let's pull ourselves from Mali, from Cameroon, and go to Niger and chase everybody out from Niger and make that a homeland for Fulani people? Nobody's going to take that. Or
Charles,
you go to...
Charles, I would like to ask you a question,
Yeah, go ahead.
if that's possible. So what is your solution? Because the truth of the matter is this: Israel is not going to, they're not going to relinquish their control territory to anybody, for that matter, including Hamas or the Palestinians. They're actively trying to expel Palestinian people from their homes, according to you. So, what do you think is the way forward? Because the the two religions, they are diametrically opposite to each other, and they cannot exist in the same space. The Jewish people,
In
they
the
cannot.
history you talk about, Jews
Yeah,
and Muslims have in the past coexisted. So I don't buy that argument.
ideologically ideologically speaking, they cannot exist. And
Levi,
Charles knows what I'm talking about.
that's patently false, right? I explained to you that prior to 1948, there were Jews living in Israel, in Palestine. There were Jewish villages, there were Arab villages, and they were living together. They were living peacefully, right? Of course, there are always times where there will be conflicts and all that, but they were living peacefully. This problem started in 19 when the Jewish state began, when the European Jews began lobbying for creating a state of Israel, a majority Jewish state, and no importing Jews from Europe and other parts of the world. That's what caused the problem. It wasn't because, oh, they were Jews. It was because the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, go and find this out. He said that he is ready to accommodate Jews who were there before 1948 because those people they are part of the land. They are natives. They are there. They were there. But that he's not ready to accommodate any Jew who came after 1948. Jews who came from Europe. Europeans, basically. So now talking about solutions, right? This is a big problem. It's almost like the Pandora's box has been opened, and it can't be taken back. However, I think there's still a way forward, right? If you look at Rwanda is a very big example of something like this, right? The genocide in Rwanda, when you look at it, you would think that it's not possible for there to be a reconciliation, but there is a reconciliation in Rwanda right now. The Hutus and the Tutsis, they're living peacefully together, even if less than about a decade ago or more, they killed themselves. Up to 1 million people died in that genocide, right? But they have been able to work out a solution. For me, I would have preferred a one-state solution. But the problem with that is Israel wants a Jewish state. A one-state solution effectively means that the Arabs become a majority. And Israel wouldn't want that. Now, let's go for a two-state solution. The two-state solution, the Palestinians are now saying, but you pushed us from our villages because this was not the 1967 borders. This was not even the 1948 borders. Are you willing to give us those places back? Or are you willing to stop settlements, to stop further Jewish settlements in Palestinian territory? Are you willing to do that? Is Israel willing to do that? Is Israel willing to honor the Oslo Accords? There was an Oslo Accord, I think in 1993. for which the Jewish prime minister who signed that accord was assassinated by a Jewish ultranationalist. Benjamin Netanyahu protested against Rabin for signing that accord, and the accord was basically we're going to pull back from certain areas, and this is a path towards creating a state. This is a path towards peace. Now, this is where the religious element comes in, where it becomes so much of a big problem, because the Jews are an ethno-religious state. The Palestinians, obviously, they have their own religion, and they want to maintain majority control of their religion in whatever state is going to happen. The best thing to have happened was Palestine should have been given its independence, just as Syria, Iraq, and other places were given their independence, with both Jewish and Arab people living together. That was what happened in other places. When Syria got its independence, it did not start killing Jews or sending them out or expelling them. When Iraq got its independence, it did not start killing Jews. When other Muslim countries got their independence, they didn't start expelling Jews. That only happened as a retaliation to what happened in the land of Israel or in Palestine, which was part of it. The other part was that Jews wanted to actually migrate to Israel. So it's a tough situation, but if both sides are able to put their religious ego aside and say, you know what, we're humans first of all, fundamentally we're humans. Can we just exist? Let there be peace. Then there will be peace. But as long as both sides want to maintain an ethno-religious state, and besides, this is what both sides do. A couple of years, things will die down. In another couple of years, Hamas would attack again, and the whole cycle will continue. Why? These people are attacking because they have exhausted other means of negotiation.
Mhm.
Nothing is moving forward. So what do? I'm not justifying it, but I'm just saying I'm trying to make sense of the situation.
Mr. Charles, what you are suggesting is impossible. I don't know. I think what I've been saying, maybe you guys have not really have been missing it. But it is impossible for the Jewish people with their religious belief to cohabit with um, the Palestinian people who are also have a separate religious belief. Those two religious ideals or ideas cannot exist within the same geographical space. That's one thing that
How do
I want,
we know?
and it's not going to be possible because I know what I'm talking about. If you go back in Nigerian history, for example, and this is not even a religious thing, people are just different. And I would always prefer, it is always better, in my opinion, that people who are similar should all live in one area, and then people and other people who are similar should also live in a separate area. I don't think this mixing of people who are
So
religiously
let me
different,
ask you a question then. Um,
racially different,
Jewish
who are
Jewish incursions into Palestinian territory, that kind of goes against what you're saying. They are displacing people who are living amongst themselves.
well, on a long run, it's not sustainable. That's what I'm saying. So if the Jewish that's this is exactly the problem. This is exactly the problem. The Jewish people are not going to allow the Palestinian people to live within the same area because there is a fear
The Jewish
of
people are
conflict.
going to take the houses that the Palestinians have had for generations.
Exactly what I'm saying. I mean, it's going
Okay,
to happen.
so that's not living among same people living amongst themselves is not what Israel is doing. They're
This is
not following your suggestion.
this is exactly what I'm saying. They can't live in exactly what I'm saying. They can't live within the
They
same
can.
geographical place. They can't. It's not possible.
So are you trying to tell me that Jews and Arabs have never lived together?
I'm not saying they could never. There is never a time where they could not at least maybe be able to come together and live.
So
you
do you
know.
think
But
they are?
but
Do you
the
think they
point
are Arabs and Muslims in the U.S.? Let me ask a question. Do you think they are Arabs and Muslims in the U.S.? Do you think they are Jewish people in the U.S.? Do you think they are Christians in the U.S.? How are they able to live together?
well, because they are living in a
Well, it's a
society
lot bigger country for one.
that is well controlled. They have laws that are not based on their
So
own
you
self
think that that
ideas.
is only
So
unique to America? That cannot be recreated in the land of Israel because somehow those people are brutes. They can't just find a way to create the laws that will enable different people of different faiths and ethnicities to live together. Is that what you're
well,
saying?
first of all, you have to create a United States because the United States is a model that, in my opinion, should be copied all around the
The
world.
United States is not even the only state where
I
different people live together. There are many other countries where
yes,
different ethnicities live together peacefully, even much more peacefully
and
than the US,
religions.
and religions too.
Well,
So
the
this
truth of the
idea
matter
that
is
this is
this:
not possible, it's not possible because both sides are refusing to yield. Both sides are being
let
dogmatic.
But the
let's take
one
the U.S.
thing
first. Let's
is
take
there is a lot less land in that
it's been.
part of the world.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's a
continue.
lot less land. It's a very small place. The really, really small place.
The point I was trying to make is this: ideologically, if you look at the U.S. right now, it's divided among itself. We have the right people on the right, we have people on the far right, and then people on the left and people on the far left. Ideologically speaking, the US is not sustainable. The way the US is running right now, if you allow
It's
things to
it's
go on
it's
the way it
it's
is
been there
now,
for more than 200 years. So,
I mean, it's
and
been
it's
there.
gone through worse. It's gone
If you
through
talk
worse
about
shit than what is going through now.
if well, we can say that because there is no violence yet, but if you have one side in the country that is actively trying to erode whatever history and whatever documents that are keeping the U.S. sane and keeping the U.S. as, um, should I say, a functioning society. When you have the left who is trying to literally override the Constitution or trying to destroy what the founding fathers have built, if you allow this to continue, because both sides are ideologically different, the U.S. is not going to exist. At some point there's going to be something very bloody that is
They've
going to happen.
always been ideologically different from Lincoln till
Yes.
now. So,
Well,
and they
before
still
then.
existing. Even
Well,
before then, they're still existing.
I disagree with you because I don't think the US
Oh
has always
no,
been.
I that's one thing I do know about. The differences have been there literally from the beginning of the United States. Virginia didn't get
As
along with Maryland. The North didn't get along with the South. Now there has been blood spilled. Um, my thing is that there's a lot more places to go in the United States. There's not as many places to go in Palestine and the in Israel. I think part of the problem is too many people in too little land. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, and
I can agree with that.
there's no reason why they couldn't even have created a Jewish state in Europe where there is more land, or find somewhere else where there's more land, right? There's no reason if they're really keen on doing something like that, but not to look at that cramped space where people are already living and say, just import more people into this place. It's always going to, the problem with land, people are always going to fight over land. Even in Nigeria, SA, this, Levi, this, that there are intercommunal clashes over land. Even people
Yeah.
from the same tribe, they fight over land. So are you trying to tell me that they can't live with each other?
See, the reason
The Jaws and the Shakiris, for in our past history, they fought each other, but they occupied the same territory. So what's going to happen? They should just find a way to segregate themselves. They've
the reason
intermarried.
I brought
They've lived amongst themselves for centuries. These clashes are going to be there, but I think that you know the 21st century affords us the ability to be able to look past some of these differences and look for a viable solution. In fact, not even the 21st century. The Middle East has been a place of diversity, of diverse cultures for thousands of years. There have been many peoples there. There have been the Arameans, there have been the Assyrians, there have been the Akkadians, there have been the Canaanites, there have been the Samaritans, there have been the Jews, there have been the Romans, there have been the Greeks, there have been so many people. Somehow they lived. So to think that it's not possible right now is because people don't want the solution to the problem. People are
The reason,
greedy.
the reason why I brought
I
up the
have to
US.
ask you a question, Charles. I think the West, to the extent that the United States, etc., are involved, I think the United States is part of the problem. You know,
Yes,
we're not neutral like arbiters.
yes. US is a big part of the problem, especially with its unequivocal pro-Israel stance, right? Where you know, I don't know, I don't know. I was like this before. Israel was the good guy. I was always looking forward to the Palestinians getting a beating from the Israelis, right? That was me because I didn't understand the context. I was seeing it as fundamentally a religious problem. I was saying it that, oh, these guys is their religion, they're just terrible people. That's why they want the Jews dead. But there is a wider context to that problem. I'm not
Well,
saying
you
that.
know, part of the problem. Look at Egypt. Just recently, they're going to send aid to Gaza. Um, the other thing no one ever talks about is just within the Islamic world, there are, it's like factional. You
Yeah,
know, Egypt doesn't want Palestinians to migrate to Egypt.
the same way the US doesn't want Mexicans to
Yeah,
migrate from
exactly.
Mars to the US. That's the same. See, people have their interests. No matter how you say, oh, they are all Arabs, but they have their own national interest as well, and they're going to prioritize their national interests. So you don't expect them to just open up their doors and take in people, right? It's not done that way, right? It's not done that way. So for the people who are you're pushing people out of the land and you're asking, oh, why are the other Arab states not taking you in? Why are you pushing them out of their land? That should be the big question, not why other people not taking in. The other people, they owe no responsibility to the Palestinians. And to
Charles,
tell you that this is
Charles,
this is
think that
Levi,
there.
let me just make this point to tell you that this is not even principally a religious thing. Other Arab states have signed peace treaties with Israel. Saudi Arabia,
Hmm.
Egypt, some of the Gulf Arab states, they are Muslim,
Jordan.
but they have peace treaties. They have recognized the state of Israel. So why are they doing that? If it's purely the religion, they know they just hate Israel, they just hate Jews. If it was purely the religion, no Arab states would ever sign any peace treaty with Israel. But that's not the case. Before 1948, both Palestinian and Jewish leaders were in negotiations with the British on how for the partitioning. They were in negotiations, they were negotiating, but it all fell apart because the terms of the negotiation was too much in favor of the Israelis than of the Palestinians. They were 10% of the population, they were going to be giving 56% of the land. And if you include some other parts, they were going to be having 62% of the land. Now they control 77% of the land. And you think that, they should just accept it. Nobody is going to accept a deal like that. I can understand why they rejected that deal.
You know, I actually wish Pelu were here because he knows this history way better. Um,
Yeah. So
he
look at this
knows it.
point, Levi. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
Stanley. Look at this point that Ogie has made. Say you may want to tell Levi that the most aggression that Jews have experienced have come from Christian societies. Absolute facts. Absolute facts. There is no Muslim society that has killed 6 million Jews. None even comes close. But Christian
Well,
Europe did that,
well, that's not a
and they did
fact. I would not agree
they've
with
done
that at
that.
all.
They've done they Okay, you don't agree with that, so give your examples of Muslim societies that have killed as many Jews as
Well,
remember, it's not just Germany alone. There were Jewish pogroms in Russia. There were Jewish what have you in so many European countries where they've ever lived. They were killed. So tell me.
let's take the Holocaust for example. In Germany, I, I think if you take a look at the ideologies that led to the death of 6 million Jews, I wouldn't say that um, it was sponsored by Christian fundamentalist ideology. I would not say that at all. So that's, in my opinion,
It
part of
doesn't matter. It
all.
was Christians doing the killing.
It
The
wasn't
many of the
even the
Germans were Christians.
fundamentalists. It was the Catholic Church. These weren't like,
I
the
don't
way we
understand.
understand Christian fundamentalists today.
Was
That wasn't the problem.
during the Holocaust. A lot of Christians were also targeted in the Holocaust. So I don't understand how that feeds into the point. I don't. That's just false. A lot of Christians were
So,
killed during the
do,
Holocaust
do you
just as much as the Jews were.
do you
Black
have
people
you
were
read
targeted
about the
during the
Crusades?
Holocaust. So
Have you read
it
about the
was
Crusades?
it was
Forget
racial.
forget
It
the
was
forget the
it was
Holocaust now. Forget the Holocaust. The history of Jews in Europe has always been one of persecution by Christian nations. Most of the time, they were asked to convert or to leave or to be killed. In Spain, in so many European nations, under Christian kings, those countries were Christian nations. Jews were oppressed. When the Crusaders got to Jerusalem, when the Christian Crusaders got to Jerusalem, they killed Jews even along the way on their way to Palestine. The settlements that they see, Jewish settlements they see, they kill Jews along the way. They killed Muslims, they killed Jews. So even if we remove that of the Holocaust, there is still enough examples of Christians killing Jews. It's not
well. I
And,
get
and one thing,
that.
one
That's
thing
different.
I
That's the
wanna
point.
I wanna point out that the whole Balfour thing, it was Europe basically opening a safety valve to depopulate themselves of Jews.
exactly. They just wanted
And
Jews out of Europe.
that Britain, no one ever talks about Britain. Um, Now, this is my opinion, and it's going to be a hot take. The West created this problem.
100%. 100%. Well, I think we've gone on for quite a while, and we may have exhausted all the points that we needed to share on this topic. It's been
I,
an interesting
I have
conversation to
actually
have with you guys. Okay, go ahead, Levi, if you have more
my
points.
question. I didn't actually get to the point because
Go ahead.
kind of interrupted. But like I said, my solution would be for the Jewish people to exist separately on their own in their own little, pockets of land. However, that the um, the territory is going to be shared among the Jewish people, the Israelis, and the Palestinians. That is the only way it's going to exist because I don't think, ideologically speaking, that the the Jewish Israelis will exist within the same space. I'm talking about on a long-term basis, without us having these conflicts reoccurring over and over again. The solution for me is that the Jewish people are going to have to work together with the Palestinians to share the land. They have to share the land equally, and the Palestinians have to be strong enough to defend their own territory. Because if you
They have to be strong there. And when they do that, you call them terrorists.
hold on a minute, let me finish. The reason I'm saying this is because if you don't get the reason why the Palestinian people are under subjection.
Gaza can't Gaza Gaza can't get anything
Stanley, sorry,
into
let him finish his point, please.
I keep getting interrupted. I don't know. But anyways, like I said, that is the only way. But I don't even know if I think the Jewish people and the Israelis, they can maintain their own state. For example, if what I'm proposing is to happen, the Jewish people will be able to maintain their own piece of land and able to maintain and control it and make sure that it's peaceful and it's flourishing and prosperous for their own people. But I'm not sure if the Palestinian people will be able to do the same thing because of the existence of Hamas and how they how they use the people and how they use the land for terrorist activity. I don't think that they will be able to they will be able to do that. And I still maintain that the Jewish people and the Palestinian Arabs and cannot exist peacefully for for a long expanse of time within the same space. That's my opinion. It might not be popular, but that is my opinion, and that's my solution for the problem. And I think Israel is willing to concede to that. In my opinion, I think they are willing to give up land to the Palestinians, but they are afraid that Hamas is going to do what they're doing now, control the land, control the people, and use those areas for terrorist activity. That is what Israel is afraid of. So that's pretty much my opinion.
So, your opinion is noted anyway. But I just have one final question for you. Hamas came into being in what 2006 or something.
Yes.
Israel had the Oslo Accords in 1993. There was no Hamas then. The Oslo Accords was a way to peace. Why did Israel honor that agreement? Why did Israel honor the Oslo Accords? Probably if they did, then maybe we would have had a solution by now.
I
And
guess I'm ignorant on
I'm
that
sorry.
regard. I just have to do some research
Please
onto
do.
that. Yeah.
Please do.
In
Please do.
my question or my statement, and it'll be my final statement, is everyone keeps saying that Hamas represents the Palestinian people. They Gaza hasn't voted since 2006. How do we know this for sure? And the West Bank isn't governed by Hamas. Their, West Bank is Palestinian too.
Yeah.
We know.
All
Well, because
right.
you can't you cannot argue with a terrorist with a gun who is trying to control or kill you. It's as simple as that. If Hamas is in control and they have they can use physical force to oppress the Palestinian people or to beat them into submission. I mean, it's obviously what is going to happen. The people with the power will
Okay,
always.
so what about the West Bank? Hamas is not in the West Bank. Why not give the West Bank its independence? Why not? In fact, most of the incursions, most of the Jewish settlements are actually going on in the West Bank, not even in Gaza. Most of the
True.
new Jewish settlements are going on in the West Bank where there are no Hamas. So, does that strike you as a state that wants peace, that wants a resolution to this problem, where you keep grabbing more and more Palestinian land? Well, I think this would be a good place to end this conversation. I think we should all go back and do much more reading and trying to understand things from a broader perspective. Narratives can be very powerful and they can be very narrow as well. And people can believe a lot of things that are not rooted in objective reality or in fact. But it was a good stream. It was a good to have you come on, Levi, today. I wish you would come on, call in
Yeah,
more so we can talk. Stanley, as
definitely.
usual, thanks for coming. Christina, Ogie, Steve, AD, every other person that came around. I'll catch you guys in another live
Thank you
stream.
very much for.
It is bad for now. Yeah, thanks, Levi.